Hi, and welcome to Home Cooking with Mimi. I am so excited for this video because rugelach are one of my favorite pastries on this planet. For a long time, I bought rugelach at bakeries and I could never quite achieve the same result at home. But finally, I have found the perfect rugelach recipe. So without further ado, let's get started. To make the rugelach dough, you will need some whole milk at room temperature. Add to it 2 teaspoons of dry activated yeast and half a teaspoon vanilla extract. Give it a mix and set it aside. Put both the plain and the self-raising flour in a bowl, and as always you can find all the ingredients in the description box below. When the yeast is foamy, go ahead and pour it onto the flour. To that we're going to add the caster sugar and then start mixing our dough. Next, we're going to add in the eggs. I like to lightly beat them so that it's easier to mix them into the dough. Then add a pinch of salt. And I think this is the point in which I need to start using my hands. Lastly, let's add the butter a little bit at a time. And then knead the dough until smooth. This will take approximately 10 minutes. Look at how beautiful and elastic that dough is. Now cover it with cling film or anything else that sticks to the surface of the dough, like for example these stretchy silicone lids. Let the dough rest for 45 minutes at room temperature and then place it in the fridge for at least an hour to cool. To roll out the dough, you will need a large floured surface. This is a lot of dough, so I like to work with half of it at a time. Let's just take a moment to look at how gorgeous this dough is on the inside. Start rolling out the dough, making sure to keep the flour handy. The dough is sticky, and the last thing we want is for it to stick to the countertop. Flip the dough regularly so that both sides get floured. Try to make it as rectangular as possible. Okay, so my dough is now the right thickness. It should look something like this. I know it's a bit hard to tell from the videos, so here are the approximate measurements. There are people who at this point cut the dough into a perfect rectangle before spreading the chocolate on it, but I don't mind it being a bit irregular. Now this is the fun bit. I'm going to use my homemade chocolate and cashew spread as a filling. I will link the recipe in the description box below. Otherwise, stick around till the end of the video for an alternative chocolate filling. The rest of this recipe is exactly the same whichever filling you're using. Spread a generous amount of filling on half of the dough. Use a spatula for this if possible, because the filling can be quite difficult to spread, and if you push too much, you'll risk tearing the dough. Okay, this looks yum. Beware, this is perhaps the trickiest part in the whole recipe. We need to fold the dough over the chocolate filling. When you do this, try to match up the edges of the dough as much as possible. In one fell swoop, great! Then pat the dough onto the chocolate to make sure there are no air bubbles trapped inside. Let me readjust my camera, otherwise you guys can't actually see anything. And I'm really sorry for the base of my tripod in the shot. Remember earlier I said not to bother cutting the dough into a perfect rectangle? That's because it's super easy to adjust it at this stage by cutting off the edges. Now we'll use a sharp knife to cut the dough into lots of long triangles. about a teaspoon of chocolate filling onto the base of each triangle. Come to think of it, I could have used a second spoon to help me out, so I don't know why I'm using my hands. I bet you already know what the next step is going to be. Yep, let's roll them all up. Look how cute this widow Rugelach is! And look at all those layers of chocolate and dough. My mouth is watering already. Remember the scraps of dough we cut off earlier? You can make those into funny shaped rugelach, which you can save for yourself. And I'll tell you a secret, sometimes these are the ones that taste the best. Repeat all these steps with the other half of the dough, and you should end up with around 30 to 40 rugelach. Cover the rugelach with a towel and let them rest for 2 hours before putting them in the oven. At the end of the 2 hours, bake them for 15 minutes at 160 degrees Celsius. While the rugelach bake, we're going to make a sugar syrup to pour over the top. You will need half a cup of sugar and slightly more than half a cup of water. Heat up the sugar syrup on the stovetop until it is hot and all the sugar has dissolved. Once the rugelach come out of the oven, immediately brush them with the syrup. This will seal the moisture into the rugelach, so it's important to do it straight away. Once all the rugelach are covered, keep brushing them with the remaining syrup until you run out. Don't worry if some of the syrup ends up by the bottom of the rugelach. The rugelach will soak it up and it will make them even more gooey. Let the rugelach cool and rest so they can absorb all that yummy syrup. This will take half an hour to an hour. Rugelach taste great immediately after cooking them, and they freeze really well too. If you're planning a party, you can make these in advance and take them out of the freezer a few hours before serving. Make sure that if you do freeze them, to freeze them in a single layer so they don't stick to each other. And now, I promised to show you how to make an alternative chocolate filling. But before I do that, I would like to quickly mention this article. This is where I drew most of the inspiration for my dough recipe, and also where I learned to make the filling I'm about to show you. I will link it in the description box below for those who are interested. So very quickly, you will need some heavy cream heated up to almost a simmer. You will also need dark chocolate, cocoa powder, dark brown sugar, butter, and Nutella. Mix the chocolate and the sugar into the cream and wait for them to melt. Sift the cocoa powder. And finally, add the butter and the Nutella. And you're done! Here are some rugelach I made with this chocolate mixture. I really hope you enjoyed this rugelach video. Please remember to give it a thumbs up. And as always, I'd love to hear what you think, so leave me a comment.